All right, sorry about that, guys. I had to cut the video in half. We decided that we were going to do this on the second half on another day. So we will continue with the questionnaire until we get to the end of the questions. So continuing where we left off, next question is, what is your favorite film fight?
Um, Luke versus Vader, Empire Strikes Back. And the reason for this is for a couple of reasons. One, I would argue it's the first fight that actually kind of pushes the Star Wars choreography a little bit. Because as much as I do love the fight from the original, it's kind of like it really was just kind of down to Vader and Obi-Wan poking at each other,
Poke,
which
poke,
in
poke, poke, poke.
which in the context of the movie makes sense. It's just, there wasn't much demand to it because at the time they were working on more of just the effects work than anything, and less on the choreography. So Empire is kind of the first one that actually pushed that boundary. Another reason that I like it is it really does display just the terrifying nature, power, and skill that Vader has. I mean, Luke comes in thinking that, he might actually stand a chance, that everything might be okay, and Vader just completely whoops his ass. And the way it's done and the way it has a gradual buildup over the course of the fight and then climaxing with Vader just overwhelming Luke and cutting his hand off, it's very well done.
Okay, well, for me, it was probably I'm really tied here. Um, Duel of the Fates and the one in Empire, because Duel of Fates, it may be over choreographed, it may be in a movie that is arguably kind of all over the place, but you have to admit, with no words spoken, they managed to convey exactly what the characters feel, and also it's great to see. This is Darth Maul at his peak, fighting two Jedi with a saber staff, and the way he takes down Qui Gon is just, it's beautiful to watch. And it's also where we got the high ground meme, believe it or not.
Oh, you mean the fact that Maul can't leverage the high ground to save his life?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, and okay, and same reason for Empire, but it's more. I believe it's more a showcase of how Vader is not so much like that small side of Anakin is just very slowly creeping out. Like he didn't want to kill his son. He merely just wanted to put him in the carbonite and ship him off to the Emperor. So he was really just toying with Luke. But at the same time, Luke was Luke was not at his apex, and he was not ready for this confrontation. His two masters say you're not ready to take on Vader, but if you have to, well, okay, but just remember what you learned and what we taught you. It can save you, and well, it saved him barely, but I think that, and also you got the big reveal, which was mind blowing at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is incredible to see back in the day the perspective of people of like how they thought about the I am your father reveal and
Yeah,
just what people made out of it at the time. So,
and I'm also very impressed because when Luke is going through that little hallway, and then Vader jumps out and just goes surprise, and then he's just hammering on Luke, like he's not holding back. And then before that, when they're down below the carbon freezing chamber, like when the music tenses up, and it's like, and Vader's like, okay, that's it. I'm not holding back. I'm gonna start chucking things at you, and let's see what happens. And of course, well, Luke, well, he gets his ass handed to him.
Well, yeah. I mean, so pretty much that kind of covers that, especially for the love of the Luke versus Vader fight from Empire.
Yeah. What is your opinion of Duel of the Fates?
Um, Very well choreographed, even if it does overdo it. Obviously, the use of Ray Park, Ewan McGregor, and Liam Neeson, very well done. I think my only problem with Duel of the Fates, and it's why I can't really link it as much with the others, is there's kind of like there's no personal connection between the characters in question. Like, so even though it's very entertaining and nice to watch, it doesn't really have much of emotional weight behind it. At least not until Qui-Gon dies.
And the other thing I'm not a really big fan of is how many times Obi-Wan gets kicked in the face. I
I
know,
mean, in fairness, he was just a Padawan at the time.
yeah.
So I mean, what do you expect?
I'm actually kind of curious what they did with Qui-Gon's lightsaber after Obi-Wan takes it and uses it to cut Maul in half. Did he?
I think they leave it in its burial, I think.
Oh. Actually, there's actually a quote I really like from the episode of TCW where Obi-Wan goes against Maul again with Ventress. I like your legs. They make you look taller.
Yeah. It it's very fun on that sense.
Yeah, and also, I should have gone for your neck. I can't
Whoever knew we had the you should have gone for the head meme before it even existed.
believe. Yeah. All right. Okay. Next question. Um, your least favorite fight, film fight, least favorite film fight.
Are we going to include the sequel trilogy in this?
If you want to.
Um, ah, I don't know. The sequel trilogy is hard to pick apart because it's like their fights are not particularly bad. They're worse. They're average. They're just very mediocre.
Well, for me, it would probably be Anakin versus Dooku. Uh,
In
in
Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
Same here, man. Because literally, I understand what George Lucas was going for, but it's kind of like the choreography is just kind of all over the place. Like, okay, when it's just the part of Dooku versus Obi-Wan, it's actually not that bad. But it's like once when it gets to Anakin, it's like you open with the Jarkai and you're like, dang, maybe this will be an interesting fight on film. We never seen a Jedi fight with two lightsabers before. Slice, done. That's it. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
I
And
mean,
then the rest of the fight just devolves into Cam just seeing their faces back and forth while their arms are just moving in the air. I'm just like, that's it. What the hell, man?
yeah. Though this is more of a showcase of Dooku's skill that he was able to disarm Anakin that easily.
I mean, I get that. It's just kind of like it's not displayed that much because we don't actually get to see how the fucking fight went. It's like you can't see anything.
And
So,
well, okay. What about the Yoda versus Dooku fight?
um, what is there to say about it? Honestly, like it's fine for what it is. It's just kind of like it's entertaining to look at, but almost a lot of the moves in there do not make any sense.
I feel like I'm watching Looney Tunes basically when I watch that.
I mean, it is pretty much animation out of there, which again, I admire the stunt double for basically having to be able to swing at nothing, but again, none of the moves really make any sense in there, and there are so many chances for Yoda and Dooku to just flat out kill each other within that fight. So I don't know. It's just kind of dumb, and the Attack of the Clones novelization really had to work hard to try to remedy a lot of the mistakes with it.
Yeah, actually, I did read the novelization. I believe it was Joe Castanew who actually mentioned that Dooku was a master in lightsaber to lightsaber combat. I can't remember the quote, but it was a really good quote and basically summed up what Obi-Wan was going up against when he went up against Dooku. And also, I like how the fight actually begins because Anakin, being the dolt, he just rushes in and Dooku just casually shoots him with lightning and tosses him across the room. It's
Is
like,
there something wrong that with the fact that when Dooku did that, I actually kind of clapped my hands a little bit?
yeah, yeah, I think everybody did that at one point. And I like how um Dooku actually, like, he takes out his lightsaber and the way he opens, like, ignites his lightsaber and he's facing Obi-Wan like square on. It's like, oh crap. I think Obi-Wan's in trouble.
Well, I mean, the whole idea is just about Dooku's sophistication with a lightsaber and all that sort of thing. And I mean, I appreciate what it went for. It's just there's other fights that kind of captivate that a bit better.
What is your opinion on the Obi-Wan versus Jango Fett fight?
I mean, it's short, so I mean, it's entertaining for what it is, but there's not much I take out of it. Like, that's a problem with all the Attack of the Clones fights. They're, in many ways, they're entertaining, but there's not much weight I carry out of them. They're just kind of, for all intents and purposes, they're just there. It's like it just feels like they added them in because it wouldn't be a Star Wars movie if they didn't have them, rather than something that organically fit the story. Like even Duel of the Fates at least made, at least within the confines of the story, at least Duel of the Fates actually existed for some sense of the purpose, given that it is what caused Qui-Gon's death.
We'll handle this. We'll take the long way, which includes going up what? Dozens of stairs until they decide, you know what, screw it. I'll shoot the window, we'll go up one floor with our extension cables, and maybe we'll get lucky.
Oh yeah. So I mean, all of those don't really carry any weight. And for Revenge of the Sith, the only fight that kind of exists for purely entertainment purposes is the Obi-Wan versus Grievous fight. All the other fights at least carry some emotional weight, given its stake on either the characters or the plot. So, for example, like Anakin versus Dooku round two, well, before TCW retconned it.
Yeah.
Um, Anakin versus Dooku round two. Anakin wins, beheads Dooku. It's a big deal with his character development because, as Anakin states, it's like, this isn't the Jedi way. Why the freak did I just do this? And that leads to kind of his downward spiral, like really starting.
Isn't there something in the novelization where after he comes back from the temple, he goes sees Padme and she's crying a tear and then he puts his robotic finger on a tear and he says something like really abusive or something? I can't remember. I haven't read the novelization, but
I
I
don't recall the novel covering that end. I mean, it could have. I mean, I haven't read the novel in a while, so I could check on it again, but I don't know. Either way, though, it's kind of like the big thing with Anakin is, there's that the Mace when versus Palpatine fight has a lot of significance because of the implications of this is kind of the beginning of the rise of the Sith, and then the Yoda and Palpatine and the Anakin and Obi-Wan has very significance. So that's the thing. It's like when you get to Revenge of the Sith, there's actually a lot of fights that emotionally matter. And then same goes for the original trilogy. So it's kind of like, so like I said, as far as my implications with the Attack of the Clones fights, they're just there for me.
okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. Favorite animated fight?
Um, hmm. Anakin versus Asajj Ventress on Yavin 4. Very testament to both of their skills, properly highlights their strengths and weaknesses very well, and concludes very well with the character development with Anakin. So, generally speaking, I feel like that fight gets the most bang for the buck.
Okay, well, I have actually have two. There's Obi-Wan versus Dirge when they're like doing this the speeder thing, and Obi-Wan comes out and he just like he cuts Dirge in half, but then it's revealed, oh, well, Dirge is not like anything we've ever seen before, and he can actually pull his body parts back together. And that was freaky for me when I watched it when I was younger. And my other one would probably have to be Ahsoka versus Darth Maul in season 7 of TCW. The fact that they got Ray Park back to do the stunt choreography and all the stunts in motion capture, I thought that was great. And plus, it really highlights how much both characters have changed. Like Maul, they gave Maul his saber staff back. Thank you, because I was getting sick of him just wielding a single saber. It didn't fit his character, in my opinion.
Yeah, which is fair.
And
I mean,
then,
the season
yeah,
7 fight does work very well. I think really for me, the only reason I don't really put that one above the Avent 4 one is just because um probably because of the length mainly. The fight is a bit shorter, which it's kind of like that's fine. It's fine for what it is. It just means there's just not as much to take out of it. So that's kind of the reason why. But, I digress.
all right. Okay, next question. Let's see here. Favorite arc of TCW?
Ooh. Uh, are reviewing this in the context of just as a regular fan or as an EU fan? Because
Uh, Either or, it doesn't really matter. It's just which arc you particularly
if
enjoy.
I were to say overall, I'll admit that probably the Siege of Mandalore is probably objectively the best, given that it does provide literally almost everything you could love about Clone Wars. Um, However, my personal favorite is probably the Umbara arc from season 4. And the reason for that is I like that it's pretty much solely on the clone's perspective. And let's just say, if you want me to get into detail of this, prepare for a rant. So I'm gonna get into this warning very quickly.
Actually, if you want later on, we could do a review of the Umbaran arc.
I mean, I would be fine with that. I mean, in general, I think we could just one day just do a podcast covering a lot of stuff with TCW in general.
Okay.
But getting into the Umbara arc, because this is kind of what's ironic, is that the reason I love the Umbara arc highlights my most frustrated aspect with season 6 and 7. So the Umbara arc, in my opinion, is probably the first arc that really goes in depth with the clones' mindset of how they think, how they operate, the way they conduct themselves, because you have them basically in the most stressful battle of their lives, basically, against an enemy that's not typical battle droids. They are organic beings on their home turf with advanced technology, and the clones don't really know how to deal with it. And to make matters from bad to worse, you have a Jedi general who is not only just a dick to them, but is a full on separatist double agent. And so the one thing that's good about the arc is that it really does display just how much perseverance the 501st has as a battalion, and more particularly with Rex and Fives, given their implications. However, so, they have that, they have the clone mindset with them getting stressed, and it covers an area that I actually kind of like until season 6 retcons it, where in a way it's like when you combine the Umbara arc with like Slick from season 1 and some of the events that you read in the comics and stuff, it actually gives the clones very justifiable reasons for, disliking the Jedi, for like being incompetent generals, because that's the thing. People try to say how nice the Jedi were to the clones and all that, and people don't really understand that, you know, when you look at Jedi like Anakin, Kenobi, and Plo Koon, because those are the three, that kind of get the most, I guess you could say, screen time with their battalions, they represent like the best out of the Jedi in the way they treat it. While it's like for every one person that treated the clones the way like Kenobi or Plo did or Anakin, there was at least like one or two more that would treat them the way Krell did. Because a lot of Jedi in the EU did just view the clones as kind of just expendable equipment. And to me, having Jedi like Krell in this arc actually gave the clones a very justifiable reason for hating the Jedi and kind of starting to view them in a negative light. And to me, that would have been a great foreshadow for Order 66. The idea that as the war goes on, the clones get more and more fed up with the Jedi and their incompetent tactics. And really, if they wanted to go even further with the Umbara arc and the way it's set up, I think they could have done an arc with like a battalion that actually hates their Jedi general. Like, hell, it would have been awesome if they had an arc about meeting the battalion that Krell used to command and how much they grew disdain of them. And the reason I'm saying, like, you know, this was a great idea and great concepts. And to me, season 6 just throws that away because the implications of Order 66 are cheapened so fucking badly due to the idea of the inhibitor chips and just this whole idea of just, oh, it's just a mind control plot device that because, oh, we can't have our favorite clones turn against the Jedi, like, so we have to have this artificial reason to get them to do it. When it's like, they never needed that reason. It's like in the EU, it specifically already states how Order 66 was a contingency order and how the clones were already growing disdain towards a lot of the Jedi because of how incompetent they were as war generals. And to me, it's just frustrating to see the individual thoughts and the individual like story arcs of the clones leading to Order 66 and just having it completely wasted. Like, imagine, for example, for season 7, and this because that is my most frustrating aspect of season 7. The idea of just, oh, these clone troopers are hypnotized. When it could have been such an in-depth arc. Like, imagine the idea of Order 66 and actually having it where someone like Rex, who up until this point has been, you know, he's been a clone very loyal to the Republic, but he also kind of has his semi-rebellious nature, and having him actually stuck in a position where he would have to choose between his duty to the Republic versus his duty to his friendship with Ahsoka. And you have that contrast with other clones in the Legion that, you know, are a lot more duty bound to the Republic, that don't have that same relationship. And so for them, it's like, if Order 66 comes down, they're very remorseful about it, but they know what has to be done. And to have that complexity within a story arc and to make it where the clones in a way are just kind of victims because they believed they were doing the right thing. They believed they were killing the Jedi to save the Republic. And it wasn't till later that they realized it's like the Jedi didn't die to save the Republic. They didn't die for the Republic. They died with the Republic. And that to me is a far more tragic story than the idea of, oh, they're just mind controlled. So there's no choices involved. Like, there's no implications, no thought process, because they're just made to do it. Even someone like Rex, who's fully aware of what's happening, still has no choice but to fucking do it. And there's no implications. There's no complexity. It's just they effectively become battle droids at that point.
Yeah, wasn't there a quote where like what was it? I think it was yeah, it was Fives. He says something, we're not like not a group of dumb program droids. We're men, and we do have to follow orders, but we also have the right to question our orders, even when we know, especially when we know those orders are wrong. And that's ironically in the Umbara arc. And it's like, okay, I gotta go off on a tangent here, so bear with me. So in the Umbaran arc, the second episode, I believe it was, or was it the third, where they take the ships up to the
Episode 3.
yeah, it was episode 3. Okay, so um, they have a perfect plan. They take the Umbaran fighters, they go up to the separatist ship, supply ship, and they destroy it. Now, yeah, obviously, things go wrong, but and Hardcase sacrifices himself so that Fives and who was it, Jesse?
Yeah, it was Jesse.
Okay, so they can get out. So Hardcase's sacrifice was great. It was I actually like Hardcase as a clone, as a character, because he was kind of one of those gun happy clones. It was kind of interesting to see that. So then when they get back to the ground, it's like, okay, who sold them out? Like, seriously. It may have been Dogma, I don't know, but then Krell's like, oh, okay, because you disobeyed my orders, even though this was a great plan, I'm kind of a racist asshole, so it kind of makes sense for the story. But he decides, you'll court-martial them, found them guilty with no evidence to support the fact that they didn't, that they're disobeying of his orders. He didn't even issue any orders. He basically just said to Rex, I want that report, or something around those lines. I don't remember what was said in the episode.
Well, Crow did deny the mission. They were like saying, "Hey, can we do this?" And he's like, "No."
Okay.
But
on the basis of that the fighters are too dangerous and they don't understand how to work them. I can see that end, but they figured out how to work them, and they basically say, okay, because you disobeyed my orders, because you went into an area that was under a different, was being, I don't know what the term was, but so I'm just gonna have you executed for no apparent reason. And it's like, okay, it's like, I'm just glad that the episode 4, when it happened, Krell got what he deserved, which is ironically he got executed.
well, this is kind of what ties back to my point, where you kind of view the idea of the clones trying to detain or even kill Krell. And in a way, you could almost view that as an implication as like an Order 66 type moment, because that's what Order 66 was designed to do. Like the original implication of Order 66, as stated, let me, I'm kind of going off my head, but I think it says something like this. In the event that Jedi leadership goes against the interests of the Republic, GAR commanders are authorized to remove Jedi leadership by lethal force, and then the command structure would revert to the Supreme Chancellor until a new command structure was established.
Okay.
So literally, that's kind of what was interesting with Umbara back before season 6, once again, retconned everything, because that was an implication where Order 66 was actually supposed to be used. Because Krell went rogue. He literally was a turncoat. He became a separatist. That was actually a moment where, literally, if they asked a report, if we're looking at the Legends continuity, if they asked a report on what happened, literally they could say that they arrested and killed him under the implications of contingency Order 66. They literally could have said that. And obviously they never do say that, but like imagine the idea of like if they were willing to take that farther, and like when Krell commits treason and all that, that Rex is saying, as of this moment, we are authorizing the use of, like, General Krell, you are being removed of duty under Order 66. You either can come quietly or we will use lethal force or something like that. Like, that would be fucking badass. That'd be something insane. But like I said, The problem is that Dave Filoni can't actually understand the idea that soldiers do bad things from time to time in service of what they think is for the greater good.
Yeah. And didn't Krell say something around the lines of, it's treason then? It's like, I see what you did there.
Well, yeah, of course, but I mean, so that's kind of my implication of it. I love the Umbara arc because that actually is kind of like the one area where TCW doesn't meddle the old EU continuity. Like it's actually a completely believable story and it's very self-contained, which I also really like. And
Uh,
so
okay.
for me, it's not altering anything. It's not saying, oh, this character's this way or this character's that way. It's literally just clones in a war with all this bad shit happening to them and just waiting to see when they will finally mentally break.
Yeah. Okay, so my favorite arc was definitely Umbara. I liked Umbara. There was also the Geonosis arc and the Mon Calamari arc. I like the Geonosis arc primarily because it was before the Umbara arc. It was really, and the Jedi, and especially Obi-Wan, he says, "I cannot believe we're back here again." It's like, yeah, kind of having a little deja vu, aren't you, Obi-Wan? And then you got the banter between Ahsoka and Anakin. And they're just treating this like, oh, who can get the most droid kills, and then they and it's basically just all out ground warfare, and it's like the bugs knew they were coming, and it's just great to watch. And probably my favorite part is probably when Kiadi Mundi and his troops are going through the caves, and he says, "Bring in the flamethrowers." I'm like, okay then. I know, I know that clones are so they're specialized unit clones, um, but I didn't think they would actually have like actual flamethrowers within his squad. And then there's the giant wall section, which was pretty funny when when they pick up. Oh no! It was when they're fighting the Droidicas, and Rex just walks through one of the Droideka shields and just shoots them, and then they blow up the wall and they throw Rex off the ledge and they save him. And he says, "Next time, just tell me to jump." I'm sorry. There was a lot of good banter there.
Well, of course, there's a lot of arcs that are just very fun to watch, and you don't have to take them overly seriously. It's just kind of it's enjoyable to see. We should probably move on to the next question.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, next one. In your opinion, what is the best thing about the EU?
I've always found it the best part of the EU to be the expansion on its world. The thing for me is that when you look at Star Wars within the self-contained nature of the movies, you have a very, well, the original six, ignoring the sequel trilogy, you have a very cohesive and complete story with a good beginning, middle, and end in this world that you want to know more about. And that's the implication that I've always had. When I watched the original six Star Wars movies, I was under the impression like, oh my gosh, this is great. I want to know more about this. I want to learn about this world and see what its boundaries are, the nature of all the factions and everything related to it. And that's what the EU is, because it takes something that otherwise is very insignificant or consequential and is able to make an entire story out of it and be able to expand on everything that we just hear and name or mentioned. And by the time you get to all of it, it's like you create a world that has a history in a sense. And I rarely say that. Like you think of lore and then you think of history. This is like a history. It's literally like the way it's cataloged is treated as if it's like a history class, especially when you think of certain eras like the Clone Wars, where before TCW retconned a lot of stuff, the Clone Wars was so tight as a continuity error that everything was literally down to weeks by dates. Like it was that insane. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Like these are written by people that literally know nothing other than Star Wars. And so that's always been my outlook on it.
Okay, well, for me, it's always been that they've been able to expand on things that we didn't even know needed expanding. Like, for example, I didn't know a lot about um, certain Jedi. Like, I didn't know about Plo Koon and what he was able to do and all that. And there was actually a couple stories that I've seen about Qui Gon Jinn that I didn't even know about until I started watching.
The Jedi Apprentice novels.
Yeah, those, and also some of the comics. And I that just made me appreciate Qui Gon as a character probably even more. But also, there's other books like that are set in the past, like the Darth Bane trilogy, which are just their own separate contained stories, but they tie it into the bigger ethos, and they basically play off of the mythos of the universe. And also, I really like how it can sometimes it can be unintentionally funny.
Yeah, that is very much true. Uh, you want to move on?
Yep. Okay. So, in your opinion, what is the worst thing about the EU?
Um, Alteration of characterization for the sake of like plot device. Basically, I don't like characters that are purposely designed in a way that's just a plot device and has no implications in their own sense. And I especially dislike it when it's altering an already established character to where basically the writers pay no attention to what came before. So, like, I think of a couple of examples of this. The good one I think of, basically the poster boy of EU retcon, is General Grievous. You got a guy who, in the classic expanded universe, is basically Dooku's attack dog and has this implication. He has this rage against the Jedi Order because of what they did to his home planet and literally hates them with a passion, is willing to do anything he can to kill them. And really, in a way, he's almost like a borderline cultist in the sense of how much he devotes himself to that. It's like literally he even just down to the point where it's like, again, his own people end up worshiping him. It's like that's the whole implication of General Grievous with the classic expanded universe. And then Revenge of the Sith comes out. You have all that potential with Grievous already established just through the micro series and a couple of Dark Horse comics.
Oh, Labyrinth of Evil too.
Labyrinth of Evil was after Revenge of the Sith. So,
Oh, okay. Never mind.
like, it was written after. So I'm talking about, like, material made before. So,
Oh,
like,
okay.
already have this established material. And then what happens? Revenge of the Sith, General Grievous enters the room. He looks all badass than ever. His design is freaking incredible. And he immediately just goes over hacking, coughing, and literally does nothing in the entire movie. Literally nothing. It's like Kenobi makes a fool out of him. It's like this should be something straining. Like, here's the thing. Realistically speaking, the novelization establishes why Kenobi can take on Grievous with his usage of Sarisu. That's fine. But they need to establish that context in the movie. And then on top of that, this should be a fucking strain for Kenobi. This shouldn't be a thing where, like, in the movie, Kenobi just bests Grievous, like, in a matter of a minute. And there's no implications to the fight. It's like... And his reputation is garbage. And so, what could have been basically the Star Wars version of the motherfucking Terminator devolves into a mustache-twirling villain who just does some evil shit and then runs away. And what Lucas completely ignores is that he already had that in Dooku. What does Dooku do in Attack of the Clones? He plans, he does all this maniacal evil shit, and then at the end of the movie, he runs away. That Dooku is a mustache twirling villain. That is his implication. And so, what is hilarious to me is that Lucas in Revenge of the Sith spends the first few minutes killing Dooku only to replace him with a character who is functionally the same as him. And that irritates the hell out of me. And, and then it gets even worse when you get to TCW, which just basically just makes Grievous consistent to who he is in the films for the worst. And then they retcon other characters, like, for example, Quinlan Voss, who in the EU is like the most serious character ever. He's literally almost considered an edgelord by people. And yet in Clone Wars, they turn him into this jokester who is just making a bunch of jokes like it's coming from Marvel. Same goes with, like, I hate to say it, even like the Clone Troopers, where I don't mind the idea of humanizing the clones and giving them individual personalities. That's fine to me. But when they literally get to the point where it's like these clones are doing things where it's like, I do not buy this. I do not buy these actions being taken by an army that is genetically modified and raised to be the perfect soldier. Like, when I think of the clone troopers and the way that their behavior and humanity should appear, it should be the same as like something like the Spartans from Halo, where it's like, yeah, they're human and they can display human traits, but at the end of the day, they're still kind of these almost, they are to a degree these robotic like soldiers because they've been raised their entire life to be the perfect soldier. And not just by anyone, but the motherfucking Kaminoans, who are literal perfectionists. Yet, in TCW, they just turn the clones into these people who are, like, once again, just, they crack a bunch of jokes, they do all this crazy shit, and they're just kind of like, it's to the point where they break so many military protocols where I'm just like, I cannot buy this. And people say the whole idea, well, the Jedi influence, and yeah, that could be a factor. I won't ignore that, but that needed to be a more gradual process. But the problem is they didn't. They literally start the series like that. Like, for example, a clone running up to punch a droid.
Oh.
What the fuck was that?
I mean, Cody kicked a droid, and he didn't scream in pain. So maybe that clone was thinking, oh, maybe I can do that. Nope.
I don't know. I'm just saying, the idea of the way the clones are set up, I mean, again, I like their characters. And this is more of an issue with the concept, not the way it's executed. And then you take something like that and you compare it to groups like the Mandalorians, who literally look like clone troopers. Literally, the Mandalorian Death Watch armor is identical. When that shouldn't be the case. Mandalorians specifically encourage individuality out of their culture. That's something very specific to them. That you modify the armor in a way that suits you and your purposes. And so, in a way, it's just weird to me that they completely got the roles of the clones and the Mandalorians reversed. And then to make it worse, you have the retcons like with Ventress and Season 6 with the idea of Yoda figuring out everything in Revenge of the Sith and not doing anything about it makes no fucking sense. Like, what? You mean to tell me, Yoda, that you knew Order 66 was going to happen? You knew that Palpatine was gonna just win and kill everyone. Like, you knew all this shit, and you knew of the events of the original trilogy, yet you didn't fucking warn anyone. You didn't fucking go, okay, maybe we should try to approach this delicately and try to figure this out and actually maybe stop the events. But no, instead, Yoda basically condemns the Jedi Order to death. And for all intents and purposes, they pretty much turn Yoda into a complete idiot. And then probably like another retcon I could probably think of as well is just Anakin really does not develop that much as a character in the show, because the problem is that they turn basically from the beginning of the show, he pretty much already acts like how he is in Revenge of the Sith. And we don't get to see any of that gradual transition from his Attack of the Clones self, which the original cartoon didn't have that problem. It's like the original Clone Wars 2003 did start with Attack of the Clones Anakin. Hell, Attack of the Clones Anakin made up the majority of the show. And then after his transition and getting knighted is when he gets to his Revenge of the Sith self, and he's gradually doing that. He becomes more snarky, and you see, when that transition happens, Obi-Wan and Anakin think less of master and student and more of legitimate equals. And I don't know. It's just weird getting that, and yet in TCW they didn't do that transition at all. And I think it was all just because they wanted to rush to get to Ahsoka's arc. So, I don't know. So probably my implications is just I don't like how the EU constantly meddles with characters and events for the sake of their own agenda. I don't like when characters are used as just plot devices. It's why I hated TCW's version of Grievous. It's why I hate the Inquisitorius in Star Wars Rebels, other than the Grand Inquisitor. Because literally, Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister are just Team Rocket. That's all they are.
Oh gosh, don't even get me started into the Pokemon stuff. I'm not even a Pokemon person.
So literally that's all they are. And then fucking hell. You get to other shit like the sequel trilogy. I can't stand Snoke, because Snoke is just used as a plot device. Hell, fucking Emperor Palpatine is used as a goddamn plot device. Oh, I want you to kill my granddaughter. Oh, granddaughter, I never wanted you dead. I wanted you to take my place. Oh, never mind. I'm gonna suck your energy and just use it to become the supreme overlord. Like, make up your fucking mind, you old dumbass. Like, Jesus Christ. It's like Palpatine in Episode 9 is only what the plot wants him to be. Sorry. That is like my dark side coming out right then and there. That wasn't even scripted.
No, that's perfect, actually. That basically sums up me in a nutshell. But my biggest thing, though, is how the thing I'm not a big fan of in terms of the EU is not everything has to be explained. Like, Solo, for example. Do we really need to know how Han got his blaster? Like, and how he meets Chewie. In the original, in Legends, he actually was an Imperial officer, and he witnessed Chewie being brutalized and battered, and he basically said to his soldiers, let him go, basically. And Chewie saw that as, quote-unquote, very honorable, and Han was discharged from the Imperial... Yeah. And he became a smuggler. Now, I'm not saying that the events of Solo contradict what happened in Legends, but I prefer Legends versions of events more so than Solo. The only thing I did like about Solo was how they got young Lando right. And I did enjoy how when Han actually meets Chewie for the first time, it's a funny moment where he's speaking Wookiee, and he basically puts on a show for the stormtroopers in order to get themselves out of that pit. It was quite interesting.
I mean, it's almost one of those movies where it's very like middle of the road. It's just like, it's not really bad to me. It's just kind of meh. It
And
has a couple of good moments, but it's just like the whole film as a whole, it's just kind of bland to a degree.
yeah, and well, the only other thing I'm not a big fan of was how, well, okay, Ventress, like you said. However, there is one thing I am okay with in terms of Ventress and her backstory in TCW is that even though she okay, she was in the TCW version of events, she was born a Night Sister, and in order to protect the clan, Talzin gives her up, and she's raised by warlords. And then Questionnaire comes into the picture. He's killed off. She starts her journey down the dark side and runs to Dooku. Okay, no problem. It's just how I. It's just how they alter events, basically.
Well, here's
And
what's dumb about it. I'm fine with a small retcon on that because at least they do try to I will credit Dave Filoni and his team for this. That at least with that they did try to connect Ventress to her EU appearance with how basically just setting up the foundation of her going to a rat attack and basically having the original backstory. That's fine. My problem is that this backstory exists for no other reason but to be a plot device for Ventress's revenge and the return of Darth Maul. And that's it. There's nothing to it. Like Ventress literally, what happens when Ventress discovers her backstory? It's literally just Mother Talzin's like, hey, you want to kill Dooku? Okay, here's two assassins, here's a couple of spells, and a poison tranquilizer dart. Go have fun. And that's it. Like, there's no implication. There's no challenge to the philosophy. Nothing. They just use it as a plot device. And then, later on, they use it as a plot device for Savage. And then for Maul. It's like, that's the problem. They literally used all these characters as plot devices because Ventress is just a setup for Savage. Savage is just a setup for Maul. And that's it.
oh yeah, speaking of that, what is your opinion on TCW Maul when he was brought back? Like when he was that spider thing and then he gets his robotic legs.
I think it was handled well. I mean, I think the idea of Maul being a debungled warrior who has been disgraced and at this point just wants to get revenge on the person who bested him. I mean, it's a good story. It's nice to see. His implications. My issue with Maul, though, is kind of like, okay, so here's my issue with Maul. His implications in the Mandalore arc, because I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that like goes, there is no way in hell Mandalore would be that easy to put under siege. There'd be no fucking way. No fucking way. Like, are you kidding me? Like, look, I know Satine is a pacifist and all, but you mean to tell me that she had no contingency plans when you're in the middle of a fucking galactic war? Are you motherfucking kidding me? And then to make it even worse, it's like Maul taking control of Mandalore was way too quick. All that should not have happened in one episode. And then when you get to Shades of Reason, Obi-Wan goes there, Satine dies. I mean, that's some good shit. And then Sidious comes in, and the fight's really good. Everything's done real well. The problem is that a lot of the events in that episode just kind of come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, Civil War's going on. Oh, Maul is just got captured by Sidious. Oh, Obi-Wan saying the Republic might come and invade Mandalore, even though that never happens till season 7. It's like all this shit is like getting set up, but it all just comes out of nowhere. There's a lack of organic tissue. Like, the way it's set up, Maul's in control of Mandalore for like weeks. Why would Palpatine decide on that random day, this random day I want to go and confront Maul? Like, Do you think Palpatine just makes a calendar? Like, seriously, do you think he just makes a calendar and just goes, okay, this day, I got a meeting with the Senate, so I can't do anything this day. Oh, this day I got to call Dooku and tell him to send the droids to this planet. Masameda, do we have anything going on Friday? No, Chancellor. Okay, I'm going to go to Mandalore and spank my former apprentice.
Wait, okay. I do have to ask. Okay, Masamida, he knew that Palpatine was a Sith Lord?
Yeah, he was in league of the whole plan.
Oh, okay. Because for some reason, when Yoda just walks into the office and he just force throws those two guards, it's like, okay, and he just looks at him and he's like, oh, we're in deep trouble, aren't we? And he just leaves. Yep, I'm gonna go do my stuff over here, and you take care of the Jedi. I don't want any part of this. It's like, okay, I mean, I don't know. And speaking of that whole thing, another arc I wasn't a very big fan of was the season 5 finale where Ahsoka actually leaves the Order. Don't get me wrong, the arc itself is great and all. It's a great mystery, but of all the people that basically Ahsoka, yeah, she goes on the run. I understand that. She needs to prove herself. She teams up with Ventress of all people.
You're gonna get to Barris. I can already read this.
Yeah. But it's not just that. It's the fact that Tarkin of all people is the prosecutor, and believe it or not, Padme is on defense, and then Anakin decides, oh, okay, I'm gonna go check this out. I mean, he has faith in his apprentice. I get that. And it's like,
Negasonic, I need a second. 1 second.
Yep. Okay, so while he's I don't know what he's doing, but he'll be back. Don't worry. So I will continue my explanation, and we'll get back to when he comes back. I'll keep going. So basically, what happens in that last arc is that it's funny because apparently Obi-Wan and Anakin were on Cato Nemoidia, but it's retconned so that Anakin and Ahsoka aren't Cato Nemoidia. And also Plo Koon. It's like, what the heck? So then, it's kind of funny because they kind of pull a red herring, which is kind of neat. And then they're whisked back from the Outer Rim sieges, back to Coruscant, and they find out, oh, the temple's been bombed. Now, normally, only a Jedi or a Sith or an infiltrator or anything like that would be able to do that. So it has to be a Jedi, or it has to be a Sith or a Dark Jedi. It has to be someone like that. So they go around, and for some reason, Ahsoka of all people is accused of killing the actual person who was behind the bombings, or at least made the bombs, if I'm not mistaken. So she gets in prison, she breaks out of jail, and it's like, okay. And then she sees all the dead clone troopers. It's like, no, this wasn't your fault. Then she gets chased through the sewers, and it's like, okay. And then she has her big moment where you gotta let me do this by myself. And then she jumps on the transport and she goes down to the lower levels. Then she runs into Ventress. That's a fun encounter. Then she has a little scuffle with the clone troopers, and then she and Ventress go to this.
Hey, we're gonna have to cut this short real quick.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, sorry, I was going off on a rant while you were gone.